Alright guys, so I'm going to show you the process that I use to edit my videos. Now in terms of software, I use Adobe Premiere Elements 15 currently. At one point I was using Adobe Premiere Elements 13, but that software started glitching out on my computer because the NVIDIA drivers went crazy or something. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. I'm just going to show you the process that I use to edit my videos as a beginning YouTuber. I don't use the full Adobe Creative Cloud Suite because that costs what, $40 a month or something like that, and that's just way too much. So anyway, right now, or the last time I checked, you could go on Amazon and you could buy Adobe Premiere Elements 15 and Adobe Photoshop Elements 15 as a bundle for $100. And of course, that's just a one-time license, so fairly reasonably priced software anyway, and it's quite a bit more powerful than your Windows Movie Maker. So anyway, I've got the SD card out on my camera here, so whoops, that goes private, AVCHD, BDMV, and then stream, which is kind of annoying, but yeah, it takes forever to go through these. I'll open up another one of these windows here, and I have 3 hard drives on this machine. I have one that's just the boot drive. I have the drive that I always work off of and keep all my pictures and videos on, and then I've got a backup drive. So anyhow, we're going to go into this drive, videos uncut, and then this is an episode of 3D printed, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in this folder, and I'm going to start a new folder in here and call this 3D printed 6, because I think that's the number that we're on. And we're going to go ahead and drag these guys over here. Now one little thing with this is that you don't want to delete these off of here, at least with all my cameras. They tend not to like me doing that, so I always delete these files with the camera itself instead of doing it with the computer, at least off the cards. So anyway, I'll go ahead and unplug that because I don't need the card in the computer anymore. And these 3D printed episodes will also have another clip to them. Whoops, I wanted this. We'll have another clip from OBS, which will always be quite the huge clip there, 30.6 gigabytes. Anyway, that's just a time lapse, no big deal there, but we're going to go ahead and open up Adobe Premiere Elements, and we'll go ahead and show you how I actually edit these videos. Alright, so this is the expert mode on Adobe Premiere Elements, and you'll see that you do have the ability to layer multiple audio and video tracks, which is pretty nice. So this video should be pretty quick and easy to edit. The reason why I chose to show you how to do this on a 3D printed video is because we'll end up going over how to do the time lapses, how to do text, and just generally how I edit videos. So anyway, we're going to start with this clip. It may not be, actually it looks like it is the one that I want. I never stripped any of these things, so when it comes to these videos, a lot of times I'll have outtakes on them. So it doesn't look like they're too bad this time, but usually how I'll check that is I'll go ahead and open them up, and you'll see like that had nothing in it, which reminds me I actually need to go ahead and turn down the desktop audio in this in OBS over here so my voice doesn't get overdone by the recordings. But anyhow, that's that. Presumably this is going to be the next clip, or that could be a failed clip too, who knows. Alright, so I've gotten this thing put together. I had to use a little bit of glue on that inner piece. Alright, so I've gotten this thing finished. I've got the, yep, that is pretty much an outtake, so there's no point in having this either. Oops, not OBS. I could actually close out of that one probably. I don't need that anymore. So it's just these 2 clips is all we have. Now, I don't think I have any clips before I started printing this out, and I may actually have to go and do a bit of screen capture too and get a little bit of that from Thingiverse, because let's see here. Alright, yeah, this is the Thingiverse link. I might go ahead and shoot a little bit of footage, put this in there, then put the time lapse, and then put that. So yeah, I'm not filming this stuff in order, but we'll make this work. But I want to see what I have first. Alright, so these are the parts as they are now. So these have been modified slightly. This piece was sanded down. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and add in a piece of screen capture footage to this just before I actually do this, and I'm going to put the time lapse in between. So anyway, let me go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to need OBS to do it, so we'll go ahead and stop the recording and do that. Alright, so I've got a little bit more of OBS recording to add back into this. So anyhow, we're going to go back into File Explorer, open up Archive, Videos Uncut, and then OBS is where I have that saved to, so that will be this one. Alright, so I might just go ahead and delete these out of here because I don't really want them in there yet. It's not going to help me at all. So we'll stick this in here. Now, a lot of times what I'm looking at on these clips is actually the audio, which will give me a good indication of where I actually started talking, because usually what I'll do is I'll start to say something, don't have any scripts, so it doesn't turn out right, and then I'll just pause and think about what I actually want to say. So you notice there's a couple long pauses in here where I messed up, so we can basically just delete that first part. And we can play through this. Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at 3D printing a tripod mount that will allow you to mount. And I just recorded this 30 seconds ago, so I know that all this is pretty much good. We're going to come up here till we see a gap. Factors that you're going to have to use. And this is like waiting for the program to load, so no point in putting that in there. And I actually kind of, well, no, I think I do want this part. Now, when I do a jump like that, I will tend to put just a cross dissolve transition in there. Alright, so I've just added all the parts that you're going to need for this. Now, I created this nut down here, which is the 1/4 tripod type screw nut. I made that with a customizer on Thingiverse. Now, if you just have a 1/4 nut that's metal, that'll work fine. It might actually work better. But the plastic nut actually works surprisingly well. So anyhow, first off, the screw, this requires... Okay, so I'm going to cut this part out because I remember I kind of messed this up. And I think it's going to go toward here where I gain some confidence and start talking louder. So we're just going to make a guess with that. And again, we'll put a cross dissolve transition in here. And these will be half-second transitions, I think, by default. It says 30 frames and we're at 60 frames a second, so it should be a half-a-second transition. So there we go. Alright, so first off, this top piece here, I'm going to go into the scale. I'm going to scale it down to 0.95. So that's going to make it a little bit smaller because... Alright, then I know the rest of this is pretty much good. Up till the end where I had to move the mouse over to the other screen and stop my recording. So that's all good. Now I'm going to move into the time-lapse footage. Now, this is a 30 gigabyte file. I probably could change some settings in OBS so it's not so huge, because really I'm recording in this part with the time-lapse at 30 frames a second, but it really doesn't matter because I'm speeding it up by so much. When you go to export the video, it's still in 60 FPS. But you'll see down here this conforming... Well, I think that's just the date of the clip. That's what the file name is. But anyhow, that's going to take a little while to do. And if you actually look at this is Task Manager. You notice it kind of hammers your hard drive. So yeah, it's trying to read like 160 megabytes a second. It takes quite a bit. Now this computer is actually fairly beefy. I have an i7-4790K, which 3 generations old at this point, but it's still, what, only 10% slower or something than the latest and greatest consumer grade Intel chips. But that 32 gigs worth of RAM, which does occasionally get used by Adobe Premiere Elements, even in the relatively light use that I put it through. The main operating system drive is actually this one. This is the drive that we're working off of with all the video files, and this is the backup hard drive. And that's just Wi-Fi, obviously. I do tend to keep Task Manager open just because I'm kind of a nerd and I like to see the usage of my hardware. I also keep Open Hardware Monitor open so I can see the temperatures and things like that. Anyhow, not real important. That's just what I do. By the way, right now I'm using OBS to record this, and it's using the hardware encoding on my... and I didn't mention this either. I have a NVIDIA GTX 970 in this computer, and the main use that I have for that card is actually for hardware video encoding. I don't really game on this thing, and Adobe Premiere Elements doesn't really utilize your GPU too much. It does a little bit for playing the timeline, but that's about it. It doesn't get used on the export or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of an underutilized graphics card, but hey, anytime I do want to game, it does a pretty good job at it. So anyhow, we got a beefy enough computer to do basically anything that I need it to do. Now technically I don't actually have to wait for this conforming thing to be over with. I can come in here. First thing I'm going to do is delete the audio because this is a time lapse. We're going to speed it way up, and of course it's not going to sound right. So we're going to come in here. We're going to come into clip and time stretch. Now the fastest that you can go with this is 100x speed, which is 10,000%, which brings that down to 1 minute and 27 seconds, which is probably reasonable enough. I don't usually like these to be too long, so anyhow. Now, one thing that I do kind of do, when I'm going from a scene like this to something that's kind of completely different, I will use some ridiculous transition like these bouncing cube things, and I always put it between clips, by the way. So anyhow, it's just how I do it. I mean, you can do this however you want to, but anyhow. And the other thing that I do with transitions is if there's a large amount of time between a clip, or one clip and the next clip, instead of using the cross dissolve, I'll use dip to black, which to me just seems like more of an illusion of time going by, but that's what I think. Now I will say, if you try to play back this time-lapse footage, is probably not going to look very good. Just because it's unrendered, and you can see this sort of orange bar across the top. That means that there's no rendered preview of it, and it's not going to play very smoothly, even though it really doesn't utilize your hardware very much. Like the CPU usage right now is at like 25% or something like that. It's not very high. I'm not sure. Faster hard drive might actually make a difference to this. I don't really know, but anyway, I'm going to go toward the end of this because I might have to cut some of it off. I'm not sure. I'll put music behind this as well. Yeah, we can cut off basically all of that because, okay, that looks weird. Oh wait, that's a nut. No, I don't want to cut that off because I printed the nut separately, so I almost forgot about it. And if there's I might be able to take out some of it. And yeah, that's not much of there's not too much time there that I can really take out. So I'm just going to leave that, and we're going to add on to the next clip here, which will be this one. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and, actually, no, that's the wrong clip, sorry. It should be, where's it at? It should be this clip. And we'll go ahead, and I think I'll just use cross dissolve for this one. Alright, so these are the parts. Alright, so now I'm just going to go ahead and watch through this, and I'll edit anything that I don't think that I need, especially with like this big gap right here in the audio. I'm not real sure what that is, but we'll find out now. So spin nicely. Alright, so at this point, this bit of clip that doesn't have any actual audio in it doesn't really need to be here, so we're going to delete that. Alright, so hopefully I can get this nut down in there. We'll stick a dip to black transition in there because that took a little bit of time for me to put the glue down in there. So, alright, so hopefully I can get this nut down in there. Actually, that landed perfectly. Feels like it's stuck down into glue, so we're just going to leave that part. Now the hope is I can get this to not fall in like that. And yeah, I don't really need the rest of this. We're going to delete it, because I basically go over all that again in this clip I'm almost willing to bet. So again, dip the black transition, because this is actually a few hours later at least, I think. Anyway. Alright, so I've gotten this thing. Alright, so I just finished watching the video till the end there, so that all looks good. Last thing we need to do, well, a couple last things we need to do are to this time lapse. So first off, usually with the time lapse, I put text on them that will just kind of go over where the spool of filament is. And I'll put text over it that will give you the total amount of time that it took to make the time, or the total amount of time it took to print, and the speed that it's being played at. So I'll put, since this is set at 100x speed, I'll put that on here. And then I'll come down here and I will take our total time, put a colon, come down another line, and we'll open this up and go into the properties of this, details, and 2 hours and 25 minutes is the total time. So I think we'll just do it like that. That'll probably, we'll do this actually. And this is the default font. I usually set this on impact. And I also change the color so it's actually white and not off-white. And I'll take this and I will hold the shift key down as I adjust this to keep the ratios the same. And I'll just kind of stick that over the spool of filament there and make this to be about the length of the whole thing, but maybe not quite all the way. Might line it up so that it's like right in line with after the transition, which it already is actually. So we're just going to leave that the way it is. And last thing we're going to do is we're going to take a song and stick it under the time lapse. So take a look at this. I have music and then copyright-free music, which is all from the YouTube audio library. So I'm just going to find some random song and throw it in here. It doesn't really matter. It's got to sound somewhat decent, but okay, let's not use that. I usually use something that's kind of rock-ish and upbeat. It's, you know, whatever you want. I kind of like that one. We'll use that. Doesn't really matter, like I said. And we'll come in here. Actually, that's not what I wanted to do to it. I wanted to just move this like that, and I'll expand this clip so we can see. And it might be worth cutting it off to the point where the music actually starts as well, or you could just offset it or whatever you want to do, really. And it's not going to play that very smoothly, but that doesn't matter. We're going to come to the end of this and go ahead and cut this off. Now you can't actually do that. This thing has this sort of remix ability or whatever they call it, which is kind of interesting. It does actually do a decent job, but usually the way that I do this is I just fade it out toward the end. And the way that you do that, if you hold down Control, you'll see that your pointer changes and you click on this yellow line here, like so, and I'll put that little dot on it, and then you do it somewhere toward the end. And you just take the one on the end, you drag it all the way down, and you drag it all the way over to the end of the clip. And now when that plays, it'll fade out. Alright, so that'll work good enough for this video here, and really that's about it. Now, just this time before I go and export the video, I want to show you how I do the thumbnails. So anyhow, I think for this one I'm going to find an assembled picture of it if I can. all my thumbnails are basically just a still frame out of the video somewhere, so we're going to go grab one of those. Alright, so I don't really have a whole heck of a lot of video to play with, but I think I'm going to go ahead and take this still, because you can see it right there. It doesn't have a tripod on it. That's the only thing I don't like about this still. And my hands are in the frame. I don't really like that either, but you come in here, Tools, and then Freeze Frame, and we'll click on Export. And we'll save this as like 3D printed number 6 in this case. So yeah, you see I already have a bunch of 3D printed ones in there. 3D printed 6 is what we're on. We'll save that, and we'll click on Cancel over here. And I'm going to go ahead and start the export on this. Now my export process is actually a 2-step process. This would be the first step, and then the second step involves using a program called Handbrake, and I actually do have a separate video on how I do that, but I'm going to show it in this video as well. But this is 3D printed number 6, so 3D printed 6, that's basically what I've been calling it this whole time, and this is just going to get saved into that D drive and then temp. And we'll click on, actually, I shouldn't have put that name in there yet because I can copy and paste it though. I need to click on Devices first, and you'll notice it wipes that out. But Devices, Custom, and then this is the setting, 1080p 60 H.264 30 megabits per second, which is actually a custom setting that I had to make. So I'll go ahead and show you this. So format H.264, that's just the name of the preset. And you'll see what the output is 1920 by 1080 at 59.94 frames per second, because of course this is America and 60 FPS is actually 59.94. Likewise 30 FPS is actually 29.97. But anyway, of course that's progressive because it's 1080p 60. That's what the P stands for, is progressive. Anyhow, that's just the length, variable bitrate, target 30 megabits per second, max of 40 megabits per second. The audio, AAC, 160 kbits per second, 48 kilohertz, doesn't really matter. And you'll see down here the bitrate settings are down further. Yeah, target bitrate 30 megabits per second, and the max is 40. The profile set to high, and the level's 4.2. That's kind of the recommended settings by this program, if you will. Again, that doesn't matter because it's going to get changed by Handbrake here after this gets done exporting. And you'll see the estimated file size as well, 1.4 gigs or so. So we're going to go and click on Save and let that go. And as that's going, we're going to open up Photoshop Elements 15. And we're going to work on that thumbnail. So we're going to come in here. We'll use this one because I don't need music open anymore. And we're just going to come into, I think that's Pictures, and then PRE 3D printed 6. There it is. We'll just bring that into here, and that's a slightly blurry picture, but we're going to work with it. And we're just going to come in here. We're going to say something like 3D printed phone tripod mount, and I might separate it out like that and make it huge. Something like that. Might just go ahead and put this at the bottom. Doesn't look too bad. Like that anyhow. I'd rather have it up at the top though, even if it's toward the corner, but it's kind of going right over this, unfortunately. This is kind of being tough to position. I think it'll be okay there though. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll go under, I think it's Effects, yep. And actually, nope, I'm wrong. It's Styles. I always get those two mixed up. But I'm going to go under Strokes first off, and we'll put this one on it because that looks pretty decent. And then I'm going to come in here, I'm going to click on drop shadow. We're going to increase the distance on that a little bit. Now I have a desk lamp over here, so I just kind of set the angle so it makes sense to have a light source coming from this direction. It's just how I do it. Doesn't really matter. Obviously you don't have to do anything the way that I do it. Come up with your own styles or whatever. So I'll make a drop shadow. I'll also put a bevel on this. Just makes it pop off the image a little bit more. So something like that. Click on OK. Now this one I'm actually going to put a little bit more text on because this 3D printed thing is kind of a series. So I'm going to put 3D printed number 6 down here. Like so. And I'm just going to make that a little smaller. Preferably smaller in both directions, not just one of them. Maybe. Something like that. And then I'll do the same thing to this text. So, oops, so I hit the little green check first. Then I'll drag this over and then hit that little gear icon. And also, by the way, the reason why I drag one of those over first is because for whatever reason that gear icon's like grayed out unless you put one on it first. So yeah, a little quirk of the software, I guess, there. But same thing with this. And just a little bit of a bevel on that. Obviously it's a smaller text, so I can't put too much on it. Now, since this is just a still out of the video, this is only a 1920 by 1080 frame. So when we go to save this, and then we're going to save it under Pictures, YT, Thumbnails, 3D Printed 6. We're going to save it as a JPEG. It's only a 1920 by 1080 image, so the file size isn't going to be too huge. Now, YouTube does have a limit to the thumbnail size, and it can only be, I think, 2 megabytes. So we're at about 0.8 megabytes, which will work just fine. We're going to click on OK. And we're done with this, basically. So I'm not going to save changes to it. There's no point. And essentially, we're just waiting for this to render out now. Which, with those time-lapse footage, like the time-lapse shots, it does take quite a while to render that because it's got to sift through that 2 hours of footage and compress it down into a minute and 30 seconds or whatever. So at this point, I'm basically just going to let this go, and I'll come back when it's finished, and I'll show you the process that I use with Handbrake. So yeah, I'll see you then. Alright, so this has gotten done. I actually let it sit overnight because it was taking quite a while, but yeah, I'm going to click on this open folder button, and then that file is right there. So we're going to come over here to Handbrake and import this video into here just by dragging it over. Take a little while, and I'll go ahead and take you through the settings that I have. So I just have a custom preset for 1080p 60. Anyhow, this amorphic thing is set on none. The rest of this will be defaults. Filters, all that stuff's turned off. Video, I have constant quality factor of 21. The encoder preset is set to fast. Encoder tune at none. The encoder profile is high, and the encoder level is 4.1. Now these two, I believe, were the ones that are recommended by YouTube. So that's just how that is. The encoder preset, you want to get this as slow as you can bear to stand, basically, because you'll either get better quality video or a lower file size the lower you set this. But it also takes a very, very long time if you set it all the way down. So I just have it set on fast. It gives about a 1-to-1 render time, which means that if the video is 10 minutes long, it's going to take 10 minutes to render through. So anyhow, 59.94 frames a second, which is constant. H.264 video. The audio is basically the same as what Adobe Premiere Elements exported in, so AAC at a bitrate of 160. And there's nothing in those two that you have to worry about. So we're going to go ahead and come into here. And apparently I didn't change the name of it, so it says my new video project too, but that's okay. And I have a place in videos and then 3D printed for this, so this will be 3D printed number 6. And I'll just take that one as a bit of a name template, if you will. We'll do that, save, and then start the encode, and go ahead and let this finish. And I'll show you, at the end of this, I'll show you why I use Handbrake to encode these videos. Alright, so this will show you the reason why I use Handbrake to encode these videos for the second time. Now it's kind of an optional thing, but you notice this is the video that came straight out of Adobe Premiere Elements, and it's 1.44 gigabytes, and over here the one from Handbrake is only 297 megabytes, so about a third of a gigabyte. So rendering these videos with Handbrake makes them a lot easier to upload, mostly because my internet connection is not very good. So anyhow, it makes it easier to store as well. So basically at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through, and on the one that was encoded by Handbrake, which is this one, I'm going to go and watch this video through, make sure it all looks good, and make sure there's not any changes that need to be made to it. So if there is a change, I can go back and do that still. And if there's not a change, I'll go through and close out of Adobe Premiere Elements and delete all the files. So I'm going to go ahead and watch this through real quick and make sure it's all good. And then I'll get back to you. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the way that this turned out. So I'll get out of here and start deleting the files. So first off, I don't need the one that came out from, I don't need the one that came out of Adobe Premiere. So we're going to come over here as My New Video Project 2. Don't need that. I don't actually need these two files either. Not sure why they're still here. But anyway, this is the only one that's going to stay. This is the one that's going to get uploaded to YouTube, and it's the one that I'm going to keep on this hard drive forever. So anyhow, those will stay. The main folder for this 3D printed number 6, that's going to get deleted. And then Premiere Elements is probably going to freak out because the media is gone, but we're going to close that before anything happens. And I don't save the project files, by the way. But anyhow, we can empty the recycle bin now. Don't need this anymore. Alright, so that's about all there is to my video editing madness. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, possibly found it useful. But anyhow, that's it for now, guys. Bye.